Hey, so I wanted to talk a bit about what counterculture is. Excuse me, it's extremely hot today, and I just had the AC on. I can't have the AC on while I'm recording, it's way too loud. Um, but someone on my punk video, someone who I've interacted with in the past, said that counterculture is inherently leftist, which doesn't make sense even on the surface of it. So, what is counterculture? Counterculture is a subculture which is counter to the primary culture. It is contrary to mainstream culture. That is what counterculture is. That's all it is. Because of this, counterculture can be just about anything. It could be right wing, it could be left wing, it could be anarchist, it could be fascist, it could be libertarian, it could be conservative, it could be anything. Anything that is contrary to the primary culture. Um, so different examples of this are actually one example. I covered this in my video a while back about how real leftism has never been tried, allegedly. But I proved otherwise. Uh, but the French court, after 1789, the prime culture, the main culture was still monarchist. It was still in favor of this aristocratic hierarchy, the differential treatment before the law. And it was what we would now term libertarian, and the counterculture was what we would now term libertarian. We wouldn't call it anarchist necessarily, although there were certainly anarchists. And we wouldn't call it communist because it didn't have anything in common with communism. It was classical liberalism. And that was the culture. That was the counterculture. Then you get the American Revolution. The American Revolution was opposed to the monarch of England as well. Now they didn't have the same aristocratic hierarchy that the French did, but the the counterculture was liberal. It was liberal, but it was right wing liberal. It was you could make an argument that the French counterculture in 1789 was left liberal. You could make that argument, uh, although I would argue that it was right wing. But the liberalism of the American colonies was absolutely right wing, uh, and we know this because they did support hierarchy. They actively instituted a hierarchical structure. The American Constitution has hierarchy written into it, literally. Um, then of course, there's also the protection of individual liberty, individual rights, which is right wing. Um, Now, as far as American counterculture goes, there have actually been different groups that have been part of the counterculture. Um, in the 1920s, you actually had flappers and these jazz type people, and that was left wing. That was left wing. Um, but then you get into uh you get into like the 50s and 60s. There's actually multiple countercultures. uh there was George Lincoln Rockwell, who was a Nazi, and he was a part of the counterculture. He founded American Nazism, and that was counter to the primary culture. At that same time, you also have the hippies, who would have been considered left wing at the time, although now uh, you take the beliefs that the hippies held in the 60s and you put it into a political spectrum test now, you end up on the right wing. So uh, that counterculture could be argued to be right wing. Then you get into the 90s. There's even more counterculture. There's rap, there's grunge, there's new punk, there's the metal subculture, and of course, metal has always had right wingers in it. Black metal in particular is notorious for having National Socialists in it. Now we have a culture that is mainly left wing. The left has had total control pretty much since the Bush era, actually. People like saying that Bush is a right winger, but his policies are international. They gave way to the socialism of Obama, and Obama was a socialist, and it infringed on the rights of the people. So it wasn't right wing when Bush was in charge, and Obama worsened it, and Trump is right of center, but he's not doing very much to stop the scourge of leftism. So ultimately, we do have a left-wing culture. So the counterculture must be right-wing. You can't have leftists opposing leftists because leftists agree on everything. I can't oppose you if I agree with everything that you say. You understand? So counterculture has to be the opposite of what the mainstream culture is. Now, there are, as I said, there are different ways to do that. Right now, there are multiple countercultures, although they all really converge as we've had the Unite the Right sort of movement for several years now. But there's conservative culture, there's Christian nationalists, there's libertarians, and all of these groups are right wing because they have to be in order to oppose the leftists. So yeah, counterculture is not inherently left wing either. Counterculture even more so than punk, because counterculture specifically states it is counter to the culture. And so the very basic logic is that in order to counter the culture, you have to be the opposite of the culture. And so it's not just one thing. And this really goes back to the everything is leftist fallacy that I've talked about before. You can't, not everyone that you agree with, not everyone that you like has been a leftist. Not everyone who has ever existed has been a leftist. These people will say that the culture is left-wing, but also the counterculture is left-wing. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't follow. That's about all. Thank you for watching. Peace.